Hey everybody, it's Kelly. Welcome back to another episode of Ask a Therapist. Raise your hand if your teenage years were the best years of your life. Yeah, mine either. The problem is if you don't come out till your 30s, 40s, 50s, beyond, when you start dating again, you are transported back to high school in ways that a lot of us don't necessarily like. That reality is not your fault, but it is something that keeps a lot of people stuck in who they are as an adult and prevents people from exploring other options that could make them happier, more fulfilled, and more at peace. Choosing not to explore those options, though, means staying stuck. So what do you do? The fear of that chaos, those intense emotions, the impulsivity, the fear of having to start over again, all of those are completely understandable, very, very fair, and we're going to talk about those. We're also going to explain what the psychological impact is of this second adolescence and talk about why it happens and, more importantly, possibly, how to survive it without burning down your entire life. If I were to define second adolescence in a very clinical type way, very dictionary.com definition, this is what I would tell you. It's a developmental replay where suppressed emotions, sexual identity, and social development finally emerge, often in an intense rush. It's pretty normal because you missed it the first time. Whether in your teenage years you were dating, but you thought you were straight, or in your teenage years you weren't dating because you weren't sure how to date the people that you wanted to date, that developmental stage comes back when you are living more authentically to be you. So this can happen whether you were dating within your actual identity and now you're freer to do so, whether you were dating within the people that you preferred to date, but you were not dating as you. And then as an adult, you're able to live as who you are, which means you can show up better in those relationships. That can still lead to a second adolescence too. Basically, it's the impact that having to be heteronormative and cisnormative has on anyone within the LGBTQIA plus community. That impact it had when we were teenagers, removal of that impact, how we show up as adults, that's our second adolescence. 3 core symptoms, if we were going to break that down. Number 1 would be emotional volatility. And that sounds so negative, the word itself, but it just means that your emotions are all over the place. You are feeling things that you possibly haven't felt before. You're feeling them more intensely than you have felt them before. And that is going to be intense for you. So if you find yourself having these unprecedented mood swings, crying over things, over people that you have never cried over before, feeling easily overwhelmed, well, welcome to your second adolescence. You know, you remember being a teenager, right? When all of these emotions that you don't know what to do with or where to put are surging in your life, that's going to feel overwhelming. And not to put a fine point on it, but how many of us were taught how to handle those emotions in our teen years, like how to actually manage emotions when we should have been taught how to manage emotions. So if you weren't, I don't know why you expect yourself to be able to handle your emotions in this great and wonderful way as an adult when you were never taught how to in the first place, and you're having emotions that you never had before on top of like normal everyday emotion. Number 2, impulsivity and risk taking. And this is a weird one for people because once your frontal lobe is developed, that typically dies down. Doesn't go away, but it typically dies down. So the impulsivity of I need to be with this person, or even I need to go out and find this person, the risk taking or the risky behaviors, trying to make sudden changes to make your new life feel more new, like leaving a job suddenly, making a big move, setting the proverbial fire to things in your life that you feel like are too connected to your old life, so you need to get rid of them. Those are all very natural impulses. And depending on the thing and depending on the person, sometimes necessary, sometimes not. That is where a licensed professional would be helpful for you because they are objective enough to not have a stake in your life and not have an opinion on what things need to be left behind and what things need to go with into the new way that you are living. For the record too, some of that recklessness is connected to that idea that you need to catch up on the time that you lost. Most people who come out later in life have this feeling of grief, of regret, and of anger sometimes towards the time that they lost living into who they know themselves to be, and the possibility of like, did I miss out on meeting my person because I wasn't able to be me, so they passed me by, you know, or the experiences that you would have or the community that you might have because you weren't able to live fully as you. It's a very understandable grief. I have an entire video on it 2 actually entire videos on it, because it's very real and it's a very understandable thing. It also leads to some of these risk-taking behaviors. Identity experimentation. This one is so huge. It's like changing your style rapidly or changing things that you like, one thing to another to another. People do this in their teen years. They're trying to figure out who they are. You do this during your second adolescence as you're trying to figure out how you then present that to the world, because you're trying to sort through the stereotypes that are out there. And honestly, it depends on where you live. Do you live in America? Do you live in a blue state? Do you live in a red state? Do you live in a blue dot, in a red dot? Like, where do you live? Who's around you? And how acceptable is it to be you in the area that you're in? That's going to play a part in how intensely you experiment here. But the reason this is such an important thing to be aware of is your rapid changing for people in your life who don't understand the process of this. They're going to look at that and say, okay, these are all just phases. You being queer, you wanting to leave your marriage, you wanting to come out at this point in your life when we've never known you to be this way. Gross. That is for them connected to their need for stability, and their need for stability does not need to impact your life. You are looking for your life to be what you need it to be, not for your life to be what they need it to be. But this like rapid changing, as you're trying to figure out who you are and what that feels like for you, you're gonna have to try on a couple different things. You're gonna have to see how certain things feel, and while you're doing that, people who are observing may brush all of it off as, well, you're just experimenting, going through a midlife crisis, something big happened, so that pushed you in the direction of wanting something big to change. This will all go back to normal, gross, at some point, and they might seem like they're not backing you as much. Not your problem and not your fault and not your issue to change. It's just something you should be aware of in case it does happen in your life. Let's talk about our 2 biggest sources of fear. The first fear is that new and scary dating landscape. How do you date? If you are a woman who has been socialized as a woman your entire life, you met and married a man, and you are now trying to date women, how do you do that? Same thing. If you are a man who has dated women your whole life and been in the culture of men who date women your whole life, you got married, you had a family, you are now trying to live the way you know yourself to be, and you want to date men, how do you do that? How does anybody do that without carrying over those heteronormative dating rules and roles? You might fear inadequacy, you might fear making mistakes, you might fear being judged as too old or too new. That's one that I hear a lot too. People don't want to date a baby gay, or they don't want to date somebody who hasn't been out for very long because those who have been aren't willing to or desiring to take on someone's second adolescence. Let's talk about that for a second. That's fair for someone to say, and it's important that you hear this, okay? It's fair for someone to say, I am not at a place in my life where I want to date someone who is so new in their process. That is not a hit to you, and that's not a dig on your value. That means for them and their process, they are at a different spot, and they have seen people have their process enough to know that that is not something that they want to feel responsible for in their life. It's okay for them to say that. That doesn't mean that you are not worth dating. It means that person is not going to date you. That's all. And since it is not your fault that you came out later and you are sort of just starting this journey now, it's just a mismatch. That's all that is. That's okay. You're not going to be compatible with every person you come across. The other fear is not being able to navigate the apps, not knowing the landscape of dating as it is within the queer community, because it is different from dating straight. Cishet dating is very different, just like cishet sex is very different. Sex is sex, that's true. And dating is dating, also true. But the expectations, the rules, the way that you go about things, the timing of things, all of those look different within different umbrellas. If this is a fear you're dealing with, I would suggest you treat it like a new hobby and not like a desperate mission. You're not on this fervent mission to learn everything you can right away, because that's essentially going to lead you through multiple different people all super, super fast, and you're not going to get to know anybody or know yourself in that time. And if that's what you want to do, I can't stop you, obviously, but if you want to get to know yourself and other people through the dating experience, that's not going to do it. If you start a new hobby, you are learning things, you're talking to people, you're learning things from people who have been doing this for a while. So if your hobby is dating, talk to people who are dating, talk to queer people who do date. Ask them about the culture of dating. Ask them about what is different to them and how that transition was for them. And I want to be really clear, like, not everybody wants to talk about this all of the time. So finding people to talk to about this and not treating everyone like they're your Google is a good idea. Had lots of conversations on this channel about that, so hoping I don't have to go into it that deeply. But doing some research, talking to people, finding things out, being a student essentially of what this new world you're being introduced to is expecting of people and what that looks like and how you can show up the most authentically as you in this new environment. Which does lead to fear number 2, which is the pressure to catch up. For so many people, when they come out later on, that fear that you've lost that time and you can never get it back. So you don't have the energy you had in your, late teens, early 20s, maybe early 30s. You don't have the kind of wide-eyed optimism that there's somebody out there for everybody. And for a lot of people who come out later in life, they've seen a marriage end and they know what that feels like when that happens. And that fear plays into how they approach dating. But that anxiety that they've missed out on something connects to a fear of regret, and people start to push themselves too hard to live authentically, which essentially does set fire to so many things in your past that eventually you turn around and say, oh, I wanted to keep that. I wanted those things to stay with me and I don't have them anymore because I walked so far away from them in order to catch up on the things that I missed out on. You don't have to catch up on anything. You didn't miss out on time. You had your process. You had your timing, and your timing is essential for you to be able to show up as you in this time, okay? No one's timing is the same. And because we live in a heteronormative world still, maybe getting worse regularly, you are fighting this huge beast of a society that tells you the things you know to be true about yourself are just not true. That's a lot to handle, and you needing to take some time to work through that is fine. You took the time that you needed. Let's talk some strategies to manage the chaos. Because while second adolescence is real, it does not have to control your life. Number 1, getting a growth partner. That's a weird title. I don't like that. Number 1, getting connected. This could mean getting a coach, getting a therapist, connecting with other people within the LGBTQIA plus community, getting with other people who have gone through this or maybe are going through this and talking to them about their experiences. Again, not treating people like they are Google and just digging information from them and never supplying any in return. Make friends, connect to people, and maybe, like I said, get a coach, get a therapist that works with the queer community and work through these things as they come up, because you don't always know what's around the corner and what's going to sort of trigger defenses and reactions from you. So having a support system ready to go, even if things feel pretty okay right now, not the worst idea. In this particular arena, that external voice can serve as your prefrontal cortex, your frontal lobe. In actual adolescence, you're developing that, which is why you don't understand the consequences of your actions, why you are impulsive, and why you don't always make the best decisions. In a second adolescence, sometimes your frontal lobe, that prefrontal cortex, has to be exterior, and it has to be somebody who can be objective and honest with you about what they see. Another option is date with training wheels, meaning start your dating situations low stakes, low context, maybe not expecting sexual interaction. Like, go for coffee the first time you talk to somebody, the first couple times you talk to somebody, in the middle of the day, have a lunch date and then go back to work. Make it so that the stakes in meeting someone new are very low, and it will take some of the pressure off that date, off those first couple dates, until you get to know whether or not you like them. Now, if you are meeting people on dating apps and you only used to date one way, when you start dating another way, the way that people show up on the dating apps is going to feel different. And that's okay, but you need to put your own boundaries up. So for instance, if people that you're talking to want to chat all of the time, that's okay if you're okay with that, but also put some guidelines in there for you. Make sure you're going to bed at a decent time and getting up at a decent time, and don't spend all of your time on that app, just like you wouldn't spend all the time on any app. You need to have a balanced life off of your phone, off of your computer, like off your screens in general, which is, I know, ironic because I'm talking to you through a screen. That's really not the point. Giving yourself that balance when you're first meeting people and first getting to know one another is huge in setting the pace and the expectations for yourself in what potential relationships will look like. Another strategy would be intentional authenticity. And this, it's very important you hear this the way I intend it. I'm not saying don't tell people who you are. Don't invite people into the truth of who you are. Don't come out to people. I'm not saying any of that. I'm saying do it with intention and how you want to do it. The unfortunate truth is the majority of people out there have a story about how they were outed in some way in some arena of their life because somebody did not respect their process. So the intentionality behind who tell and when and what areas of your life you change and when, thinking it through, thinking about what you want and where you want to end up versus where you are now, like that intentionality sets you up for how you want to live your life. It's not about everyone else's comfort. It's not. I'm saying for you and your developmental process, be intentional about how you. So the thing of all of this is your second adolescence can actually be a really unique gift. Because you didn't get to do this that way the first time, you can feel those super intense feelings, those highs and those lows, which can be honestly as wonderful as they can be difficult. You get to do that again and to discover yourself and discover what you want and what you need in a relationship, and you get to do it your way. And the stakes are higher than they would have been if you had done this in your adolescence, right? Either way, you are where you are now. And this is manageable and it doesn't need to derail your process. And the fact is, you are more resourced and resilient now than you were as a teen, which is kind of huge. If you've had an experience in your second adolescence that you want to share with other people and you're comfortable doing that, if you drop that in the comments below so other people can see how you handled things, that would be great. And that's it for today. Thank you so much for being here. I will see you all next time. And until then, take care of yourselves and each other.